Now I'm going to ask you to take this jury through your experience, what happened in Australia once you arrived there.
Well, I was nervous because of the conversations that I had with him before I left, and then in transit, I stopped in Dubai and spoke to him too. So I was a little nervous, but he indicated me that he wanted me to come. He said, I miss my wife at the end of the phone call that we had in the airport. I called him from Dubai. And he said, I miss my wife. I felt okay, safe to, it's good. And I missed him so much, that's all I wanted to do is see my new husband. I flew in, I arrived early. I walked into the bedroom. I was so excited to see him. And he was so, he had lost a ton of weight. So I just knew something was up. And he kind of quickly, kissed me and kind of, we had some interaction. It was brief. He was leaving to go work. He had to work that day. But then after the plan was he would come back, which he did in the evening, and then he was supposed to have a 3-day weekend, a long weekend. So he comes back that evening, and the chef had kind of prepared some things for the fridge, mashed potatoes, I think spinach as well. There were some steaks in the fridge, but he had kind of prepped some of the sides. And I was looking forward to having this kind of, our style at-home date. We'd just been, we're a new married couple. We hadn't seen each other for basically a month after getting married. And I start dinner and am happy to see him. And at some point early in that evening, he pulls out a bag of MDMA. I asked him what it was, and he told me it was MDMA. And I was surprised because at the time, that was, there was no question mark as to how I would respond to that, or so I thought. It's like, why would you even think that that's okay? He had already gotten clean and sober. I was, touch and go, but for the wedding, he was drinking Beck's. I think at some point he did have wine on the island, but it wasn't an issue, right? Just moved ahead. So I was surprised that he would even pull out this bag and, well, frankly, not hide it from me. And he kind of seemed to suggest that we should do it together. And I was like, absolutely not. Like, I just got here. I want to see you. I want to spend time with you. It was the exact opposite of what I expected, what I wanted. And it just seemed delusional at the time to me that he would even suggest this to be something that I could participate in with him. If you had been through what I had been through at that point, it's crazy. And at some point, he drinks in front of me. At first, I think it was like a Malbec or a wine or something. And I remember we hadn't, it kind of started an argument. And that was upstairs in that room that we just looked at a picture of, by the sunflowers. That's more or less where we were standing, just closer to the kitchen. And we get in an argument, and I shove past him, just stomp off. And he grabs me. We have an argument about me walking away, and am I walking out of this? And in my head, I was like, I actually wasn't thinking of leaving yet, but that would later be going through my mind. We had a brief interaction, and I don't remember the exact sequence of things. I wish I did. I have a lot of flashes. It gets a little bit more confusing from my ability to recall everything in a linear way a little later on as things got crazier. But for this part, the first night, what I distinctly remember is at one point, I don't think I had gotten very far, or maybe I came back into the room, but when he shoved me, I went flying across these parakeet floors. I mean, just skidding across these floors. And I remember thinking it just looked so easy for him to throw me around like that, you know. I just slid, screeching my skin against this like beautiful wooden floor. And we had another argument that was a spin-off from that. It was just kind of this on-off sort of thing that I remember eventually in this interaction, he shoves me up against the fridge. He has me by the throat, and he just was holding me there by my throat. And I wondered if it was the drugs. I wondered if it was him. It hadn't, in my recollection, hadn't been that long. He has me up against the throat. He's kind of bashing me against the wall next to the fridge. We're kind of moving in that area. And at some point, I'm in his face. And I don't know if he had let go of my neck or loosened my grip, but I remember slapping him across the face, screaming at him. He's screaming at me. I got my hand free when he tried to grab me when I walked off. I stormed off. I slammed the door upstairs. I don't know if it was in that instance or if it was in a later one that I eventually barricaded the door. You know, it wouldn't stop him from coming in. He could come in the other doors. You know, there's a back door, there's patio, but at least I'd hear it. And this is March 2015 by this time. I'm being medicated by his doctor. He's giving me anti-anxiety meds, giving me, you know, had already tried to give me antidepressants. They didn't work for obvious reasons, I hope. I wasn't sleeping. I had insomnia. I'd wake up with panic attacks. I needed to sleep, but my ability to do so was really, really compromised at this point. And I kept thinking that I just wanted to hear him or know if he came in so I could be aware, so I could be ready for what was going to come in with him. And at some point I go back downstairs. I don't really know at what point I gave up and stayed behind my barricaded door, but I managed to go to sleep. I took some sleeping pills. I woke up, and when I came downstairs, he was still up. He confirmed that when I asked him that he had not slept. He had not eaten, so I tried to get him to eat. We get in an argument. He was accusing me of Eddie Redmayne, and by this point, he thought I was working with Billy Bob Thornton on the movie I had just shot, but I had already worked with him a year earlier. But he was very upset about him and the gentleman that invited me to a concert in London. You know, my co-star, he was upset about these people, even though I had done that movie a year prior.
Who was that?
It was Billy Bob Thornton, Jim Sturgis, and Eddie Redmayne that he was upset about.
And let me just stop you for a moment. Have you seen Mr. Depp take any drugs by this point?
Oh, yeah. Sorry if I left that out. That when we had the argument about the MDMA, he suggested to me that it wasn't on the no-fly list, like it wasn't on the no list. That was his argument. That was his defense. Like, this isn't the but you didn't say I couldn't have this. And you know, over and over again, Johnny told me I wasn't the reason he was getting sober, but I was the reason he was staying sober. I had saved his life and all this stuff. It wasn't like it wasn't my job to police him, but I kind of ended up being in that situation, it seemed like, in his mind, you know, when he would express that to me. So he took a handful of pills, and I didn't count how many, but when I came back downstairs, I did the math on the amount that was left, and I think it was either 8 or 10, I can't recall as I sit here now, either 8 or 10 pills of MDMA.
That he had taken or that were left?
I don't know. I remember we had a conversation about the amount that he took. So I remember saying, you
Objection,
took all
hearsay.
Okay, I'll sustain the objection. Okay.
There were only a few left in the bag, so I think it was what he took. And I said, Johnny,
Objection, hearsay.
he confirmed that he took that amount and that he could take that amount.
And what amount?
At this point, there were 10. He had taken 10, 8 or 10. I can't recall.
And when you say at this point, is that the first night? Is that the second day?
This is the second day. This is after I've already fallen asleep for the night in the room upstairs. Come back downstairs. He was still awake.